Most likely, it's been a while since you bought or sold your last home, and let me just tell you, things have drastically changed. This video alone will help you make the right choices when selling your home that can help make you tens of thousands of dollars. First, I'm going to break down how the real estate market has changed over the last 30 plus years and also give you a little bit of insight as to how today's modern buyers think and shop. Second, I'm going to talk to you as a home seller as to how you can get in tune with today's buyer. Third, I will uncover your choices when selling your home so that you can make the right decision for you. I will also tip you off that some of the suggestions I give to you oftentimes differ from many of the other realtors you'll hear from, and they just might surprise you. Fourth, we're going to discuss proper pricing in any market to ensure that you are getting top dollar with the fewest amount of hassles. With all that being said, let's dive into how today's modern buyers differ from those from 10 to 20 years ago. First, let's start with understanding who your buyer is, and most likely your buyer is going to be either millennial or Gen Z. And for you parents out there, we all know how flaky millennials and Gen Z can be, and sometimes even downright difficult. Now in this video, I may start picking a little bit on millennials and Gen Z, and it's for two reasons. Number one, I've got 4 millennials myself, so I feel like I'm kind of an expert on it. And number two, they're not watching this channel, so we can talk amongst ourselves and they'll never know. In all seriousness, today's buyers are extremely tech savvy. They have access to all the data that we didn't have when we bought our homes 20 or 30 years ago. They implement many different online platforms to evaluate neighborhoods, homes, lot size, lot exposure, crime statistics, school statistics, walkability ratings, and more. They're even looking up data on you, where you work, your family situation, when was the last time you took out a mortgage on the property. It's amazing how much information they're gonna have, not only on the property, not only on the community, but on you. They're also keenly aware of some of the competing homes that have recently sold. Let's say like your neighbors down the street, it's the same model as yours. They're easily able to now compare the updates that house may have had in comparison to yours, or vice versa. Technology has enabled them to streamline the home buying process, to communicate quicker, and to also make more quick and precise decisions when it comes to purchasing a home. I oftentimes compare it to a batter in baseball who stands up at the plate and has to make a quick and precise decision on whether to swing at that 100-mile fastball or let it go. Now let's discuss how these millennials and Gen Zs think and how they make buying decisions. There's no question it's much different from us Gen Xers and Boomers. Today, the expectation of what the buyers are going to get come from the internet, social media sites, as well as places like HGTV and some of these tacky shows you see like Selling Sunset or $1 Million Listing. First, I think you need to come to terms with the fact that your buyer is not like you. You're not the target market. So however you may think about your home, your buyer doesn't think about your home in the same way. Once again, think about it this way. Your target market is probably going to be someone in their upper 20s, 30s, maybe early 40s. And I think you also need to step back a little bit and think, what would it be like if I was selling my home to my child? What would they say about the house? What would they think? Let's face it, this generation is more spoiled and privileged than we were when we were growing up. Now, I will say, most likely it's probably our fault because for whatever reason, we seem to think that their lives should be easier than ours and they should have a better life than ours. I don't know about you, but if you were raised in the 70s and 80s, that was a pretty cool time, and I definitely would not want to replace that. Once again, your target buyer, unlike us, has grown up with an iPhone and has also grown up purchasing on Amazon, where everything's pretty much ready to go whenever they want it. I also find that this target group of buyers, they want what they want when they want it, and you know what? They're gonna hold out until they get it. Unlike us, when we bought our first home, typically we relied upon the agent to open up the door, show it to us. Maybe online there was a photograph or two, maybe in a magazine or in the newspaper there was an exterior photo in black and white, but obviously it's not that way today. The buyer's first experience in seeing the home is going to be online. And as I like to say, this is their first showing of your property. From here, they're going to make a pretty quick decision on whether they want to see your home in person or not. As I said, do I swing or do I let it go? Most of these buyers are looking for that HGTV home in turnkey condition. Whether you think this is annoying or not, this is the expectation that they have. Also, think about it this way. Once they put a contract on your home, you know they're going to be sharing all these photos with all their friends and all their family. And what they're looking for is accreditation and people saying, you know what, wow, that's a beautiful home. What an awesome home you got. So you got to think about it that way too. Once again, much different from when we bought our homes back maybe in the 80s, 90s, or early 2000s. When I first started in the business, and once again, we're talking 35 years ago, we're talking actually the late 80s, there were no photos in the MLS. Buyers were basically reliant on the Washington Post in our area to print out an ad on a property that's going to be held open, or some of these like cheesy black and white magazines that would show up at the CVS or the grocery stores and things like that. Now, these magazines came out once a month. And so by the time they actually hit the stands, they were probably already 2 or 3 weeks outdated because we had to get the ads in there 2 or 3 weeks ahead of time. The other thing is, I would say the first 10 to 15 years of my career, buyers would come out armed with a clipboard, pen, maybe a tape measure, and I think that they came out to the homes and it was more like they were not expecting perfection. They were looking for a property that maybe checked off enough boxes to make sense, but they also planned on putting some of themselves into the house. And what I mean was, oftentimes they'd be saying things like, well, we can paint and we can replace the flooring. Maybe we'll ask the seller for this. Maybe we'll take a little bit of money off the price for that. And those days are completely gone. There's been so many changes that have taken place in the real estate market from the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. But the one thing that hasn't changed is the need for a great real estate agent. Over the years I've been in the business, I've come in contact with many lousy real estate agents, as well as I've come in contact with many great real estate agents. I've pulled many of the top agents from around the country, and I'm willing to share some of those agents, some of the agents in your area with you if you're considering selling your home, potentially relocating, downsizing. You know what? Maybe you're not looking to sell right now, but you just have some questions. If you're interested in getting in contact with one of the top agents in your area, simply fill out the form below in the description box, and I will get in contact with you. I'll ask you a few questions just so we make sure that we get you connected with the top agent in your area that not only will get your home sold, but sold for the most amount of money and the fewest amount of hassles. Now that we've discussed how millennials and Gen Zs shop for homes, make decisions on homes, and purchase homes, let me also put a little bit of fear to rest. It's not so important that your house necessarily be trendy. However, it's imperative that the property be in excellent condition with no deferred maintenance and show well online as well as in person. This means it's important that some of the big ticket items like roof, HVAC, water heater, and some of the other mechanical systems of the house are in good and operable condition and not beyond their life expectancy. If these systems are either not working properly or on their last leg, they will tend to add the cost to the price you are asking, and many times this alone will either price them out of the house or decide to walk away because they don't want to deal with the headache. When it comes to preparing your home for today's buyers, beyond just the basics, you may also want to consider taking it a few steps further. I'm not going to take a huge deep dive on this topic because this video could last potentially for hours. However, I'm going to tell you it starts with decluttering. I always say, clutter eats equity. And I will tell you that is such a true statement today more so than ever before. And if you have any questions when it comes to decluttering, you may want to check out this video here. Nobody wants your stuff. After decluttering, you want to make sure that your house is Q-tip clean. There should be no fuzzy edges and no mildew or mold in your shower stalls or bathtubs. Besides nobody wanting your stuff, also nobody wants to see your mold and mildew and think, I gotta bathe in there? Once we get past decluttering and cleaning, now let's take a look at the top ROI improvements you can make when selling your home. And no, you can take a breather here. I'm not even talking about gutting your kitchens and baths. I will tell you numero uno when it comes to the items of improvement that get you the highest ROI is professional painting. Notice I said professional painting. Once again, I've been doing this a long time and I've seen many versions of a paint job, and let's just say all paint jobs are not equal. It's imperative. If you're gonna do it right. Crisp, straight lines, and colors that appeal to the mainstream. I typically see a professional paint job yielding a 3 to 5x return on investment. We all know if you were guaranteed a 3 to 5x return on an investment in the stock market, something that you'd be able to get back within maybe 60 to 90 days, we would take that every day of the week. You need to think about painting that way. Now, when it comes to colors, colors will kind of go in and out of fashion, but also many of the colors are going to be determined by the type of home that you have. Is it more modern or is it more traditional? Typically in 2024, most of the homes that I sell are more traditional in nature, and so I'm suggesting typically something in the grayish tone. If you're not familiar with grayish, that is kind of a combination of a gray beige. For more modern homes, we may favor more white tones. Once again, not going to take a huge deep dive on colors today. However, I'm going to let you know that gray alone, on its own, the colors that were pretty much the staple for maybe 5 to 6 years, are completely out. Now, second on the hierarchy of improvements to be made with the highest ROI in mind is going to be flooring. And when it comes to flooring these days, there's so many choices, from wood floors to LVP to obviously carpet and ceramic. Once again, I'm not going to get into the weeds on the do's and don'ts on the types of flooring that you should use or recommend. However, this is another thing that a good real estate agent can help counsel you on. The one thing, though, I would suggest when it comes to flooring is try to avoid too many different types of flooring, too many transitions where it just kind of looks like kind of helter-skelter and everything. So it is important that you have seamless transitions, and once again, try to keep it as uniform as possible with the types of flooring as well as the colors of the flooring. Replacement flooring, if done right and also combined with a professional paint job, typically will yield a 2 to 3x return on investment. Next, let's talk about lighting and door hardware. Now, I have a term that I call debrassing. Many of the homes that I work with were built in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s when this fake brass was the rage and was used in every home. We saw it in lighting fixtures, we saw it on hinges on doors, and of course we saw it on door hardware. There's no doubt about it, it's tacky and it's out. For just a few dollars, you can remove a lot of these old brass light fixtures and replace them with something more modern, once again, at a very low price. While you're at it, you may want to consider tackling your door hardware, your hinges, your knobs, your lever pull downs, those type of things. Now, when I bought my property in 2021, the home was built in 1997, and we purchased it from the original owner, and of course, we had brass all over the place. And we knew immediately it wasn't going to last for long. So for roughly $1,500, we replaced all the hinges, all the handles on the doors, turned them from brass to black. And I have to tell you, the look of the house is just amazing. It just jumps out at you. And people kind of question, what have you done with this house? And it was relatively small investment that went a long way to make it look a little bit modern and to our liking, but also definitely, I think, to the liking of today's modern buyer. Yes, some of these things are a little bit of a hassle, but I will tell you, a nice tight paint job with newer flooring and the new door hardware goes a long way towards wowing your buyer. Okay, I couldn't stay away from it forever, but now it's come the time where we're going to tackle the kitchen and baths. Over 90% of the time, I'm counseling my clients not to completely renovate their kitchens and baths. You're simply not going to get the money back in return. However, oftentimes what we're talking about is more of a refresh. Typically with a refresh, we're talking about things like painting cabinets, not replacing cabinets. We're also talking about changing out the hardware on the cabinets. Once again, some of these things, little things, go a long way. It could also mean potentially replacing countertops and maybe an appliance or two if really necessary. Funny thing is, I've talked to so many home sellers over the years who may have interviewed 2 or 3 real estate agents, and I hear it over and over again. Well, the agent just told me that we've got to replace our countertops with granite or quartz, like that's the key to selling the home. And I'm here to tell you that's not the key to selling your home. Many of the homes that I put on the market, the cost just to replace the countertops with a granite or maybe a quartz is the same cost they would pay to paint the whole entire house. Let's say we're talking about $7,000 or $8,000 for granite or for quartz. I mean, I would much rather take that same $7,000 or $8,000 and spread the love throughout the house with a new and professional paint job. Let me tell you, you're going to get much more bang for the buck. This is all part of what I mentioned earlier in providing the buyer with a good solid base, a home that they can move right into. Okay, maybe it's not exactly everything they want. Most likely they will make changes, but it's the type of thing where they can make changes later on their own time. They're not forced to have to do it right up front. Now that we've gotten past the dreaded kitchen and baths and what to do with them, let's talk a little bit about home staging. And let's talk a little bit about what staging is and what it's not. Most people, when they think about staging, they think about, we're taking all of our stuff out of the property and we're going to replace it with professional staging, rental furniture, artwork, things like that. And that can be a part of it, but I will tell you once again that 90% of the time when it comes to staging, we're using oftentimes what the owner has in the property. Sometimes it's getting rid of some things. Other times it's redistributing some things and maybe moving it around a little bit better. But most of the time we're using what they have. So it's not as big of a job to tackle as you might think. And once again, you get a big bang for the buck. And when it comes to staging, normally what I'm sharing with the sellers, the things that they're going to want to do and purchase are going to be things that, pretty easy. It's going to be like linens and maybe new comforter, new pillows, things like that. And you know what? The good news is once the house is sold, you can take that stuff with you. Lastly, what we're going to talk about in getting in tune with today's buyer is landscaping. Let's just call it more yard cleanup to give it a more fresh and inviting look, both online and when the buyer pulls up in front of your home. Most likely, you've heard of the term curb appeal, and I'm here to tell you it's a real thing, and it's imperative that you get your buyers excited, once again, both online, and you can't let them down when they pull up to your home to see it in person. Remember way back in the day when our parents would get us all dressed up and we'd drive to a place like Sears or Olin Mills for our family photographs? Man, I hated those family photographs. I remember my mom taking me and my brother to the barber shop the day before, getting our hair cut. We didn't want to get our hair cut. And then the day of, bathing you, rushing around, getting you to fit in some suit you really didn't fit into. I mean, it was just, let's just call it was a cluster. So why did my mom go through all that effort to get me, my brat brother, and my dad already gussied up, ready for these family photographs at Olin Mills? Well, the reason was pretty simple. It was to put our family's best foot forward, to have something archived for the future, and once again, really to impress others. And when you think about it, this is the same thing that we want to do when we put your home on the market. We want to impress others so that they are drawn to us and, of course, are interested in not only purchasing, but giving you the most amount of money possible. It may take a little bit of time and effort, as well as monetary investment, to prune trees and shrubberies, to mulch garden beds, to cut, trim, and edge your yard. However, once again, those efforts are going to reap many rewards when it comes to impressing your buyers both online and in person. These are some of the tips that I have to not only spruce your home up, but really, once again, to get in alignment and in tune with today's buyer. Once again, it doesn't mean completely turning your home upside down to get it from that 70s show into the modern age. So now that we've talked about all those type of things to get your home kind of more in tune and in alignment with today's buyers, I'm going to surprise you a little bit and also talk to you about the other option of selling, which is an as-is condition. You may be surprised, but unlike other realtors and so-called experts that you're going to see online, I'm here to tell you that you can still sell your home quickly and profitable and still selling it as is. Now, you may ask, hey, Kevin, that goes completely against what you just said about getting our home prepared for the market and in line with today's buyer. So while it's true that selling your home as is goes 180 degrees against what we were just talking about in preparing your home for the market, I'm still, once again, here to tell you that there's really no rights or wrongs. There's no have-tos. There's no have to, I gotta do this, I gotta do that. It's completely up to you on how you want to sell your home. And there is still a market for an as-is sale. If you're one of those people where you find that you simply just don't have the bandwidth to get your home ready, or you're just simply, you know what, I'm not going to do that, I'm just going to sell my home as is, no problem. That can be done. However, there's definitely going to be some pros and cons to that. So let's kind of dive into the pros and cons of an as-is sale. Now, breaking down the as-is option, I would still say that it makes sense to want to declutter ahead of time, and it's still imperative that your home be clean. But when it comes to improvements, this may be where you kind of draw the line. Now, some of the pros to selling your home as is that you can get your home ready for the market quicker, obviously with fewer hassles and, of course, much less investment. However, if you opt for hassle and stress-free on the front end, you know what? Something's going to most likely have to give big time on the back end. What could that be? Kind of tying in the as is to what we discussed earlier, which was getting your home prepared for the market to increase your buyer pool, to increase your demand, and increase your home value. It's going to be kind of the opposite if you choose the as-is route. No doubt you're going to be shrinking your buyer pool, which then shrinks demand and usually puts downward pressure on price. I mean, you can't expect to have your cake and eat it too when it comes to preparing your home for the market. One of the things you can expect when you sell more or less as-is in shrinking the buyer pool is oftentimes what you're going to find is you turn off what I really consider to be the right buyers and turn on the wrong buyers. So who are the right buyers? The right buyers are the people that are out there today. Probably, once again, your millennials and Gen Zs who are looking for a home ready to move into turnkey condition, and they're willing to pay a premium for that home. So if you're turning off the right buyers and turning on the wrong buyers, let's discuss who are the wrong buyers. I would say that your wrong buyers are going to be your flippers, your investors, somebody that's actually more interested in getting a deal than they are buying a beautiful home. Ultimately, what they're looking to do is take unrealized equity that should belong to you and turning it into equity that now belongs to them. It's also important to understand that excessive days on the market puts a lot of pressure on the value of your home as days add up and the property becomes stale to the marketplace. I often say that a home going new to the market is a lot like a pizza taken out of the oven. It's definitely going to be at its most appealing when it's fresh, hot, right out of the oven, right off the stove, versus sitting around for a few days. Now, I like cold pizza a day or two later, but you know what? You start getting into 3, 4, 5 days, that pizza becomes pretty nasty. A lot is similar with your property. You don't want it sitting around too long because it doesn't get more fresh to the buyer. It gets stale and it becomes oftentimes stigmatized over time. Once again, ultimately that puts pressure on the value, meaning a lower sales price. So that's what I have to say about as is. And over the years, I've worked with many clients who have improved their properties to sell and maximize on the value. And I've sold homes for other families who, once again, just either didn't have the bandwidth, the time, the effort to put into it. And there's always going to be a buyer for that property, albeit it's probably going to be a little bit less. Ultimately, in the end, there are no have-tos. There's no rights or wrongs. So don't let anybody tell you that you have to do this or you have to do that. You always have a choice. It's really about, once again, making the very best decision for you. Lastly, let's talk about proper pricing. My suggestion is to become educated. Once again, I may surprise you in what I'm about to say, but I would start with going ahead and checking out your property's values on places like Zillow, Redfin, and Realtor.com. I'm going to be completely honest, I don't have a lot of faith in these places. However, it's good to see what they're saying. Oftentimes what I find is that between the three sites, their values may range 20% high and low. Also, what I find too is that those values oftentimes could be 20% low, 20% high of what I believe market value is. So they're not highly reliable. At the same time, it's not a bad idea to check into that. And also know that your buyer pool is probably looking at this as well. So it's kind of good to know what they know before you go on the market. The next step is really you need to start engaging with a top realtor in your area. You're going to want that person to come out to the property and give you an idea of, once again, the things you may want to consider doing, the things you want to stay away from so that you're investing wisely into any type of improvements or repairs. And that agent should also be able to provide you with a market evaluation. And on the market evaluation, I would say that they should give you a range of where they think your property can successfully sell. A high end of the range probably means making improvements and really putting your best foot forward in the current market. And of course, the low end of the range is more or less an as-is sale. So once again, this should arm you with the things that you need to know to make the right decision. Do I sell as is or do I make improvements? This agent should also have a vast network of top contractors, vendors, and home stagers. So if you decide that you want to go the route of improvements, or maybe you just want to check into it just to kind of get a sense as to what the cost would be, they should be able to connect you with some of these top contractors to get good and reliable quotes, as well as give you a time frame for completion. If you're working with a top agent and they've gone through this market evaluation with you and you've seen kind of the high end, the low end, and of course, gone through even price quotes through contractors and vendors to see how much investment it would take to get to the high end. I think that at that point, you're really armed with all the information you need to make the decision of, is it an as-is sale or do we make improvements? If we make improvements, how many do we do? How far do we go with that? If you have additional specific questions about your home or your situation and you'd like to talk one-on-one with me directly, click on that Calendly link below and we can set up a time for a video conference. I would love the opportunity to discuss some of the plans and questions you have to give you more specific and tailored information to your situation. If you'd like to view more housing market videos for us 55 plus community, you may want to click on these videos here. I'm Kevin Grolich, watching out for our 50s plus community. I will see you next week.